What is a non-porn movie that, when someone tells you they like it, causes you to question everything you think you know about them? Ironically, I feel like a lot of good films are loved by a lot of douchey people. For instance, movies like Fight Club, The Wolf of Wall Street, any Quentin Tarantino movie are good movies. However, every person I've ever met who worships those movies is an absolute tool. Dumb and Dumber. 1 or 2 Dude, Where Is My Car, Romy and Michelle's, whatever it is. White chicks, like 90% of the individuals who like these movies as one of their favorites, end up being personality clashes at work for me. Anything starring Will Ferrell, the man is not funny. No, I would even go so far as to say he is anti-funny. He sucks the funny out of any movie he is in. He is objectively overrated. Pay per movie versus how much money the movie boxes. Our tastes in entertainment differ too much and they cannot be trusted to make media entertainment recommendations to me. And before you say it, no, he was not good in Stranger Than Fiction. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't think this will be a popular answer. It's just I do not get it. To me, it doesn't feel artistic, and it doesn't feel scary. It's pure cruelty, and in a way that doesn't seem revelatory or interesting about human nature. When I find out someone who enjoys watching, especially rewatching, that take place on screen, yeah, I question what I think I know about them. Considering my boyfriend is a huge gore, extreme and/or rare movies fan, nothing surprised me anymore. I've seen a lot of people mention a Serbian film when it's actually the least extreme movie we have in our house. And on a less serious note, maybe Cats, or Late Touches? Zack Snyder's Justice League, or almost anything Zack Snyder really. He seems like a nice guy. Everyone seems to enjoy working with him. I feel bad about his family troubles, but God, do his movies suck. When I was in college in a film studies class, we had to break into groups and decide what the best movie of all time was. My group selected something fairly typical, Forrest Gump I think. Another group selected the movie Torque. I couldn't help but applaud it. Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen. A friend made me watch it. It honestly physically hurt to watch. It was just endless shaky cam and explosions and disorienting cuts, like being forced to stare at a strobe light for 2.5 hours. All the while, the least likable machines since dentist drills make grass body humor jokes and racist stereotypes. If someone said this was their favorite movie, I would genuinely wonder if there was something wrong with them. Mean Girls. Sorry not sorry, I know it's out of the topic, but most reality shows too, like The Kardashians and The Bachelor kinda shows. Mad Max Fury Road. I don't care what everyone says, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I specifically didn't capitalize the title because it doesn't even deserve that respect. That's part of the issue. They tried too hard to turn a game into a movie. The fight scenes were cool, but they didn't put much planning into the actual story. I expected it to be better. Overall, it was a boring movie to me. The only good scene was the opening scene. After that, they just wanted to get as many characters as they could to trigger nostalgia, and they fucked up by making it too modern. They should have explored the non-Earth realms more and focused on Shang Tsung's role more. The Rise of Skywalker. Honestly, it's the worst piece of writing I've seen in ages. Of all lazy-ass movies in the world, it was one if the laziest. Netflix or Japan. The Japanese one actually had a more satisfying conclusion than the anime. The Netflix version, on the other hand, all hard drives containing the master copies of that movie need to be relocated to whatever put those Atari ET games were thrown into. I'm glad I'm seeing this opinion show up more. I loved the movie ending so much, didn't actually read the full manga until years later, and while it was obviously still good, there was a bit of emptiness in comparison. I liked it when it was all about hell. The dude who played Piccolo was also a huge fan of the franchise before he was 11 caster and tried to do what he could to help fix the film. He was actually really good in the role as well, and even does voice work in the dub of Super as well. It's a nightmare on camera, basically a fictional porn star doing really messed up things, think drugs, rape, children and torture. My roommate had to study it in his cinema class. I still refuse to watch it after reading the Wikipedia page. I feel like I'm the only person to have seen that movie thought it wasn't very shocking at all. It has some messed up stuff it implies, but it's pretty laughable how stupid the execution is. I thought most Western horror gore flicks of the past 15 years were more disturbing. The French Martyrs film was way more fucked up than a Serbian film, like not even a competition. Like that big she-cock reveal at the end where he spoilers raped his family. Like, I understand that on paper is shocking and gross, but also to show that and have it be shocking and gross it would be CP. So instead he just shags a bed comedically, then big reveal his son and wife are under there. But the way it comes across in the movie is like they were just cuddling and they pull back the blanket. It doesn't really work as a shock. I cringe every time there is a Reddit thread on grossest movies whatever, and there is just this huge thread like, oh my god, never watch it will ruin your life. It's a fucking joke of a film. Compared to Martyrs, where once it ended I just felt kind of upset and really down, exactly what they were going for. That movie worked. Martyrs is 100% better executed. The whole point people say not to watch a Serbian film is it brings up pretty disturbing material and 99% of people will get nothing more out of it. Saying duty watch it is not a glowing review, but I get if you are one of those people who pride themselves on watching body horror and shrugging it off like early 2000s Rotten.com addicts, then yeah, I guess it would be disappointing. It's cheesy, brings up fucked up stuff, and even if you dig deep into it and what it's trying to represent isn't that complex, that's why you don't watch it. I watched it and my sister and I enjoyed it when it first came out. I watched the TV show this year in its entirety and also started watching The Legend of Korra. I see now how badly Shyamalan massacred such a classic. He did such a disservice to its original. In the early 2000s, my local newspaper included a section for everyday people to write essays about their lives. Basically a nationally syndicated letter to the editor. One week's column was by a mother of two girls. She wrote about taking them to see Catwoman and how much they loved it and felt empowered by it. I'm 70% convinced that it was a plant by the studio's marketing department. Funny story, my mother once asked me to suggest a movie for her and her BFF to watch, and I sarcastically suggested The Human Centipede. She didn't realize I was joking. Next time she went over to visit, Mom, BFF, and BFF's husband streamed The Human Centipede. It's become a meme between the three of them. I regret nothing. I stayed over my buddy's house growing up and we got absurdly blazed and I was so high and was in a goofy mood. The mood changed when his brother came upstairs and got excited to show us some movie, Attack on Darfur or something. I forget what it really was because luckily I've blacked it out, but I think it had something to do with a village of people being raped or killed by attackers and a baby was spiked off the ground. Weird night. This was my first girlfriend's favorite movie. We watched it, and during I looked it up on Wikipedia and had to ask incredulously how this could be her favorite movie. She appreciated the technological achievements and said she understood there were some racial themes but didn't think they should detract from a broader enjoyment of the film. We're no longer together. We watched scenes of it in my film class in college. The professor specially talked about how problematic the film is before we even dove into the way it pioneered certain techniques. It's a film that sets standards for how to film certain things. The one I remember is motion and continuity of movement between takes. So it's important, but only the technical aspects are worth study. The film itself is racist trash filled with all sorts of awful stereotypes. She's actually right. It's one of the most important movies in the history of filmmaking and it should be appreciated despite the fact that is racist. Said that, I understand that if it is your favorite movie is kinda weird, but it's important to do a shout out to remember that maybe the creator of an artistic product is an idiot, but that differs from the artistic value per se. Take Lovecraft or Hawthorne for example. Shadow over Innsmouth is a perfect example of this read on its own. It's a creepy story about a village populated by murderous fish people, but then you find out what inspired the story and you feel kind of grimy for enjoying it. Still a great story, but fuck me, that guy was obsessed with race. I'll see your Junji Ito and raise you and Arthur Machen, basically a Welsh contemporary of Lovecraft whose only drawback appears to be the fact that he believed wholeheartedly in magic and belonged to a secret occult society called the Golden Dawn. Definitely recommend his work though if you're after some sweet, guilt-free cosmic horror shenanigans. I've recently been reading Lovecraft for the first time. I was a little startled when I looked him up and found out what kind of person he was after reading a few of his stories. He's definitely racist, but it doesn't seem like he particularly likes his paled, educated, xenophobic, useless protagonists. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm just defending him. I don't approve of his treatment of Pac whatsoever, but it seemed like to me that his own art ends up criticizing his pathetic views a significant portion of the time. Any artist who manages to criticize his stupid, racist world, even while remaining tangled up in it, has succeeded in some way at making the world more right side up, I think. Which isn't to say his writing has no issues. His descriptions of Islanders and Pac are always going to be super dated. I just dislike the takes that are like small-minded racist technophobe wrote a story about a white guy who hates air conditioning and fish. Lol, because for heaven's sakes, there's nothing in the stories that suggests his frail, jumpy characters are something worth emulating or even particularly reliable as narrators. She's definitely not actually right here, because she also said that she understood that there were some racial themes, in The Birth of a Nation. To be honest, it's a great cinematic work. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that Nazis entrusted a woman to make such important ideological movie and not some of your usual common folk but male Aryan directors via Harlan's. That being said, if you're not studying film history or Nazi propaganda strategies, it's more than enough to have seen it once. Yeah, it's wild. I'm interested in it because I'm fascinated both by propaganda film in general, and by the fact that it was a woman filmmaker who made it. But it's so awkward to be trying to talk about pioneering women of cinema and one of the groundbreaking ones is a bona fide Nazi history. Why you gotta do me like this? Holy shit, I just read the article. Did Jordan Peele straight up get gaslit on the most epic level? You're not jumping at the chance to play literal shit in our movie? Well, we're giving the role to Sir Patrick Stewart. This makes Peele's general success with an after Get Out that much better. It was also the first film shown in the White House during Wilson's presidency. It's based on a similarly hateful book, which is a cornerstone of the Lost Cause myth. Did a bit of research in class about it. Pretty Woman, a romantic comedy about a hooker with a heart of gold and her John who just happens to be a confused, rich businessman, one of the good guys. You know, fuck that shit so much. I can see that. I love the movies you mentioned. but it takes zero effort to imagine the type of people you might have encountered who love them. Fight Club. The lone wolf who loathes the mindless mass for being cheap, who cannot separate themselves from the subtle oppression of society, has a superiority complex and does not understand the actual point of the movie, will proudly quote the movie at every instance where it is barely applicable. Wolf of Wall Street speaks for itself really. Materialistic coke-snorting douchebags who think they own the world because they once made $500 on the stock market and then lost everything they put in, but at least they are on the grind opposed to you puny wage slave. Tarantino. The people who pretend they're into art because they watched Django once, they are of course the sole arbiters of good taste and can shit on every movie you love, although they haven't the faintest idea what they're on about, and will gladly make up criticism on the spot that doesn't make sense when you think about it an hour later. Short. Tarantino has the same flaws. I am all three of these. That's why I know. Man. Is it a coincidence that if you were to ask me movies that I watch once every year, it's Fight Club, Wolf of the Wall Street, and Pulp Fiction, a Tarantino movie for the uninitiated? I don't know if I worship them because that would depend on your definition of worship. But I absolutely loved some peculiar things about these movies, the dialogues, the reality of life in the former two, especially a philosophical one in Fight Club, and great direction in all. Well, you called me a possible douche tool, I guess. Yikes, tongue. If you don't mind me asking, what are some peculiar behaviors that these people who worship these movies exhibit? Yeah, that is wrong from my perspective too. I would never even remotely want to be a Tyler Durden, Jordan Belfort, or rituals, substance abuse, hookers, scamming people, vandalism, acting shit to people. All of these are off the list. Thanks for your take though. Smile. So, I remember when this was announced as coming out on Netflix and there was a huge hubbub about it, but I never actually saw it. From what I heard, most of the issues were because of a scene from the trailer and the cover art they decided to use, which was different than the cover art from the original French release. But I also recall people saying that it was being blown out of proportion and it really wasn't that bad, just depicted very poorly from Netflix's pre-release stuff. I know it won a couple of awards. Apparently at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, the director won the directing award, and one of the actresses won the Caesar Award for Most Promising Actress. It also received fairly positive reviews from critics. But then all this shit happened with Netflix. It got absolutely review bombed and shredded to pieces. Has anyone actually watched this movie? Is it really as bad as all the hubbub made it out to be? Or is it not actually like that? Pretty Woman, a romantic comedy about a hooker with a heart of gold and her John who just happens to be a confused, rich businessman, one of the good guys. You know, fuck that shit so much. Irreversible, 2002, I respect that movie, but I'll question anyone who tells me he or she likes it. I would suggest to watch that movie if you want to educate yourself on how it feels inside of a BDSM gay club in some areas and how random rape can happen late night on the streets. This is how gay clubs were looking in Russia around 1990 to 2000. Can confirm this, and I can confirm that this is how rape happens. I have at least 2 friends who had to experience it firsthand. In fact, this film has the most realistic rap scene I have ever seen in a movie. Monica Bellucci and Vincent Cassel performed frighteningly realistic, one as a victim, other as a desperate avenger. Edit, addition. 3 movies actually. If you like either Office Space, Waiting or Van Wilder, then I can find a common ground to get along. If you don't like any of them, then I look forward to torturing you in hell. A Clockwork Orange. I feel like I should have liked it, but honestly, a lot of it just made me feel physically ill. I thought maybe that was the point, but some people seem to genuinely enjoy watching the particularly gnarly parts. Later I learned a lot of things about Kubrick and the movies he's directed that just give me bad vibes. That's the point of his movies, but like, he's not a good dude, to say the least. I feel like a square, but I just kinda hate everything he's made now, because it's all tainted with sadness over how badly he broke Duvall and how much King despised the adaptation.